Good day, and welcome to the second installment of this series, this lecture series on finding business funding. Today's topic that we're going to be getting into is the issue of grant funding. For many businesses and individuals, whether you're college students looking for educational supplemental funding, or whether you're a startup business or an existing business that needs funding, what has come to bear is the grant platform has come to move to the forefront. But a lot of persons hearing about grants don't really know what a grant really is, and point blank, they don't realize the amount of grants that are available out there that could bring money into their situation that can solve a lot of their money issues and money problems, especially from a business standpoint. In terms of the funding process and looking at grants, what we find is that the process of grantsmanship, it covers a broad scope of activities, including preliminary planning and research, proposal development, and proposal follow-up. Through this process, what we found is that grant seekers, the number one and number two questions that are asked to us as a company is we're asked that where is the grant money available from, and how do I go about getting it? That's the second question. In the overall course of this lecture, I'm going to try and give you information as to where they're available and how do you go about getting the money. The next question that would normally come up in terms of grants is, where does the grant money actually come from? The two primary sources of grant money are public and private funds. Public funds are obtained from governmental units such as federal, state, and local agencies. Private funds, on the other hand, come from organizations involved in charitable giving, such as foundations, direct giving programs, voluntary agencies, and community groups. There are even what they would call global agencies that would cater to providing grants. For instance, the IDB, also known as the Inter-American Development Bank, they've been known to give grants and things of that nature for local projects that needed subsidizing. In terms of federal funding, the federal government is the largest of all grant makers actually in the United States. Much of the federal grant budget moves to the states through formula and block grants. From there, it is up to the states to decide how to use the money. The federal government administers several types of grants designed to accomplish different purposes, such as conducting scientific research, demonstrating a particular theory, or delivering services to a specific population. Examples of these grants include one, research grants. The research grants to support investigations aimed at the discovery of new facts and revision of accepted theories, or application of new or revised theories. The second would be the demonstration grants, which would be to demonstrate or establish the feasibility of a particular theory or approach. The third would be a project grant, which is given to support individual projects in accordance with the legislation that gives the funding agency discretion in selecting the project, the grantees, and the amount of the award. The fourth type of grant would be the block grants, which would be to provide states with funding for a particular purpose. And lastly, a formula grant, which is to provide funding to specified grantees on the basis of a specific formula using indicators such as per capita income, mortality, or morbidity rates outlined in legislation or regulations. Before we go any further, I want to talk about the DUNS number, which is known as the Data Universal Numbering System. All organizations applying for a federal grant or a cooperative agreement must have a DUNS number. That's first and foremost, ladies and gentlemen. You must have a DUNS number. Individuals who would personally receive a grant or cooperative agreement award from the federal government, apart from any business or non-profit organization they may operate, and foreign entities are exempt from this requirement as well. I should say again, foreign entities are exempt from this requirement. The DUNS number is a unique 9-character identification number provided by the commercial company Dun & Bradstreet. The DUNS number is Dun & Bradstreet's copyrighted proprietary means of identifying business entities, on a location-specific basis worldwide. A DUNS number remains with the company location to which it has been assigned, even if it closes or goes out of business. The DUNS number is widely used by both commercial and federal entities and was adopted as the standard business identifier for federal electronic commerce in October of 1994. The DUNS was also incorporated into the Federal Acquisition Regulation in April 1998 as the federal government's contractor identification code for all procurement-related activities. In terms of the importance or significance, the DUNS number is something that if you haven't already gotten one, I would suggest you just simply go to their website and just simply fill in the request for the DUNS number by web. You can find that particular form at www.fedgov.dnb.com/web form. Or you can just simply call them toll free at 866-705-5711. In addition to federal funding, state and local agencies also administer grants. Money is used to support these programs obtained primarily through state and local tax revenues and funds received from the federal government. Example, the block and formula grants, as I alluded to earlier. Federal application forms could be found at fedforms.gov, which provides a one-stop shopping for the federal forms most used by the public in regards to moving forward in this vein. Fed forms, I would say, contains many, but not all of the forms issued by the federal agencies. If you cannot find the forms you need at Fed Forms for the specific agency, I would tell you to go to www.forms.gov for further documents. The next area that we want to look at in terms of grants and things of that nature would be the private funding area. Private funding can be obtained from a variety of sources such as foundations, corporations, voluntary agencies, and community groups. For the most part, philanthropic organizations fund programs which either address their individual interests, whether it's food conservation or food sustainability or farm safety, or benefit a particular group. Example, company employees and their dependents. The last group that I worked with that got a grant in this vein would have been a fishing cooperative in the Bahamas, actually. Examples of major types of philanthropic organizations would include, the first would be private foundations, which receive income from an individual, family, or group or individuals. The funding priorities of private foundations are usually based on the personal philosophies of the founding members. And that is an area that you're going to have to pay attention to in terms of what the criteria for the grant is. The second type of private funding would come from corporate foundations, which receive contributions from a profit-making entity such as a corporation. The third would be a community foundation, which is involved in grant giving within a specific community or region. The fourth private funding source would be direct giving programs, which would be philanthropic arms of corporations which donate goods and services for charitable causes. The fifth would be voluntary agencies, private organizations which support charitable programs that are consistent with their overall mission, such as the American Red Cross, for example, provides printed materials and staff consultation for health projects in various communities. The last would be community groups, which are local organizations which focus on supporting projects within their communities. Examples of these organizations include churches, junior leagues, civic organizations, etc., etc. Now, many of you would be wondering, how can I obtain funding? How can I get a grant? What are the steps in the funding process? The thing is, no matter what type of funding is needed by your organization, the grantsmanship process involves three distinct phases. The first was the preliminary planning and research. The second is the effective proposal writing. And lastly, or third, is the proposal follow-up. To complete these phases successfully, the grant seeker should consider the following in terms of the steps in the funding. But before I go into that, let me give those three distinct phases in terms of the grant funding process again. The first is the preliminary planning and research. You want to check the background of your project and make sure that you dig deep into that, whereby you provide your grant sources enough information whereby they're not basically feeling about in the dark, trying to figure out exactly what it is your organization is about and what it is exactly that your organization is trying to accomplish. Okay, so in terms of the steps in the funding process, the first step would be in terms of identifying a need. In essence, you need to ask yourself, what is the problem and how does my plan address the problem? For instance, if an organization, say a fishing cooperative, for instance, they need to go about raising funds, say for institutional strengthening or something along that lines, the need would be for proper structure to be implemented. So once you identify what the problem is, you can address it, and your plan has to specifically address whatever that problem is that you're trying to solve and fix. The second step would be to identify funding sources. You have to ask, who should I approach for funding? How do I obtain information about potential funders? And, this is the identification of your sources stage. The third step would be to develop your proposal. The questions that you need to ask yourself or that you need to consider is, what are the goals and objectives of the program? Secondly, how will the program be carried out? Thirdly, how will I budget the program? And lastly, what type of proposal format should be used, whether in terms of forms or letters, etc., etc. The fourth step is to submit your proposal to the granting agency or organization. And in this instance, you'd want to ask yourself, am I consistent with the funder's application deadlines? Yes, because all funding sources in the grant world, they have deadlines in terms of when they would like for all of their applications to be in. And this is something that you need to be mindful when submitting your proposal. And the other issue that you need to be mindful of is, am I sending the proposal to the appropriate contact? In a lot of instances, a lot of foundations in particular complain that a lot of individuals would send them their proposals to their general business email address and would get lost in the whole matrix. Whereas when you're dealing with organizations like Kauffman Foundation, they have specific areas that you can address your proposals to, and they won't get lost. The fifth step, or the final step in terms of your grant submission and proposal steps, is the follow-up. The question is, was the proposal accepted? That's what you get asked. And if not, why? And should I submit a revised proposal? In a lot of instances, there have been cases where individuals were awarded grants, but because the follow-up was not done by the necessary persons within the organization, you would have grants basically sitting up there for months at a time, in some instances years, because the persons who subscribed to, applied for them did not go the extra step of dropping an email or making a phone call after the submission period. These steps are not completely exhaustive, but it gives you an outlay or a plan to follow in terms of getting your grants applied for and doing the necessary follow. So just to bring that closer home, let me go through the steps again. 1, identify a need. 2, identify funding sources. 3, develop a proposal. Step 4, submit your proposal. And step 5, do a follow-up on your proposal. So how do you get started in all of this thing with putting your grants together and things of that nature? The hardest part of the grant process is getting started, believe it or not. With this in mind, the following checklist has been basically developed to help grant seekers get on the right track and get forward in getting a positive grant. The first thing that you need to be mindful of in terms of getting started is you need to become familiar with the grantsmanship process. If you're a first timer in this area, you may wish to attend a grant writing workshop. And in terms of teaming, or you can team up with an experienced fundraiser. That is another option that is available to you. In addition, you may also wish to hire a professional consultant for proposal guidance and development. I would always tell you, surf the internet and check your local library. They have sections in libraries related just to grantsmanship and funding resources, believe it or not. Online, everything that you need is online. Google it and get familiar, man, with the process. The next step that you should be mindful of is check the funding sources in your own backyard. Here it is. I've encountered a lot of individuals who would go to the far end of the earth to find funding sources when they had some of the best funders right there within their community. Here it is. Oftentimes, grant seekers approach larger national foundations for projects which may be more attractive to local community-minded funding organizations. Here it is. You gotta be mindful that national funders support projects which have a broad impact, while smaller funders support those which affect their own individual community. So you got to be sure to consider this when beginning your search in terms of getting your grant and things of that nature organized. I would suggest that you contact associations and members of organizations that are related to your field of interest. They might be able to offer suggestions for the best place to begin your funding search. I would suggest local chamber of commerces is a good starting place. In terms of the amount of individuals that you should pursue in terms of the organization, I would strongly suggest that you pursue several potential funders. Once you've identified them through conducting your various searches, the odds of a successful search are greater when you approach a variety of funders. Yes, maintain a log or a journal of what organizations you've already contacted and when. This is very important. Each grant program will probably have, each grant program will have a different set of deadlines. So it's helpful for you to have that master list that you can always follow and make sure you're not approaching persons within these organizations wrongfully or wrongfully timed and so on and so forth. That sort of way. Basically, most rural information centers would be a great place for you to direct you to potential funding sources within your immediate communities and things of that nature. As well as if you're looking for just federal funding databases, you have the catalog of federal domestic assistance. which could be, it's an internet database containing information about federal and domestic programs, including federal grants, loans, insurance, training programs. This information is available on eligibility, application procedures, and selection criteria and deadlines. You can find this if you take a look at their website. It's cfda.gov. I'll give it to you again. That's cfda.gov. Another federal funding database for rural areas would be online as well. This would be the ric.nal.usda.gov /NAL. This online internet database contains information about rural and federal domestic programs, including federal grants, loans, insurance, etc., etc. What else? Another popular website that you can check into and get a lot of information is grants.gov. It's an online database as well, containing information on more than 900 federal grant programs. Or you can give them a phone call at 1-800-518-4726. And just to be clear, I'm not officially endorsing any agency, any website. I'm not a paid actor or anything of that nature. I'm just trying to give as much information about this as possible. Those are the government databases. In terms of the private databases, you can take a look at GuideStar, which can be found at www.guidestar.org. This allows you to search more than 1 million U.S. nonprofits by subject, category, keyword, state, nonprofit type, etc. It allows you to identify local or state organizations. GuideStar for me has been very effective in the past. The second database or directory that you can use for information would be the Foundation Center. Their website is the foundationcenter.org. That's foundationcenter.org, and they're real good as well. They give you links to private foundation websites. They give you links to grant-making corporate foundation websites. They also give you, they give you a whole lot of information at the foundationcenter.org. The third source that you may want to take a look at is the Community Foundations by State. This is called TGCI, the Grantsman Center. Their website is tgci.com/funding. They're effective. Fourthly would be the Community Foundations by State, or Council on Foundation, which can be found at www.cof.org. That's another directory that you can take a look at. The fifth one that you can take a look at is the idealist.org, which allows you to search more than 40,000 nonprofit and community organizations in 165 counties by city, state, keyword, etc. If you're just searching for charities, a good place to start or a good place to look is the IRS search by city and state website. Believe it or not, you can just go to irs.gov /charities /index.html, and you'll be able to find a whole lot of charities out there that can fit the mold of your organization. Excuse me. So in terms of the guides to states, foundations, you can find the two main guides that I've come across in my usage in this area has been to finding local funding. The first one would be a guide to state foundation directories, which is also a part of the TGCI group, which is, I gave you earlier, the tgci.com /magazine /finding. The next state and local funding directories is another guide that I found was real good by Jimmy Jimmy Tom and Sarah Collins. That can be found at foundationcenter.org /get started /FAQs, frequently asked questions. So, in essence, you have so many directories and so many databases, but you'd ask yourself, why is it that many more persons out there are not applying for these grants? It's almost as though, persons, I wouldn't say that they don't know about it. That is partly to blame. What I would say is they don't know the process and the procedure. And by the end of this audio teaching here, you will be able to basically do the grant procedure on your own. Once you've written a few grant proposals, they get a whole lot easier, you see. And it's one of those things that you will find that is really helpful. If you're an individual, you're looking for like a lot of newsletters and forums and things of that nature. One forum that I found online that was really good was the Minneapolis, Minnesota Giving Forum, or newspaper online, so to speak, and that could be found at mcf.org. Another source of good information from a newsletter standpoint would be the Federal Registrar out of Washington, D.C. Their National Archives and Records Administration, Monday through Friday. You can take a look at that. It's gpoaccess.gov /FR/index. I'll give that one to you again. It's gpoaccess.gov /FR/index. They provide you with some good newsletters. You get the Grantsmanship Center magazine. They also provide a good magazine and newsletter. You got the Humanities, the magazine of National Endowment for Humanities. You can find them at NEH.gov. You got the Philanthropy News Digest. You got the, but basically most of the helpful hints that will push you through in terms of these newsletters and other sources, you can find them at the foundationcenter.org. So if you get lost, just go back to the Foundation Center. Now, in terms of resources for grant writing, I would tell you that if you can write a good business plan, or you can write a good private placement memorandum, writing a grant proposal is actually a walk through the park. If you want to know a user-friendly guide, there's a good one in terms of how to do it. There's a good one at the Foundation Center website that I gave you earlier. And if you're looking for some really great articles on grant writing and fundraising, you can take a look at TechSoup.org /Learning Center. They give you a lot of information there as well. Now, in terms of the purposes and moving forward in terms of understanding what grants really can do for you as a company and things of that nature. Grants make the process of developing your organization easier. Finding funding through grants is a very regimented process. You can almost set your watch on it. If you have difficulties, a lot of the entities that lend money, not lend, but it's given through a grant process. You don't have to pay it back. That's one thing I forgot to mention. Whenever grants are disbursed, it's not a loan like the traditional commercial bank. Is not a funding round like venture capital funding or angel investor funding, where they require a percentage of your company in terms of equity. The grants are basically distributed, and as the process of distribution goes, you follow the contract's stipulations as to how the monies are to be spent and disbursed, and it's a rather straightforward process. To give you a very good, clear idea in terms of what has been happening with grants and things in the past, most persons have not maximized uh, their grant positioning, so to speak. They basically they don't understand that grants are there for the betterment of an organization. When I say this, what I'm saying is I did work for a cooperative some time back, and in dealing with the cooperative, there were a lot of options that became available through the grant, and the organization that I was dealing with, they were so afraid to accept the grant in its purest form. They kept thinking, hey, we got to pay this money back. But with grants, you don't have to pay monies back. You just have to manage the money that you're given with a very professional and yeah, and a very honest and open and forthright means. You see, because what I found is in looking at the overall makeup of the grant program, there's a situation where most persons don't maximize the moment, so to speak. And I'm hoping by the end of this we'll be able to maximize the moment. As I alluded to earlier, one of the areas that we find that funding through grants is available is via charitable funding. For instance, you have in institutions like Family Action and Barclaycard, which deal in these areas of educational grants and things of that nature. Not to make you think that we've left. Grants are available for, like I alluded to earlier, grants are available for businesses, be it startup. It's available for non-profit organizations. It's available for organizations such as cooperatives and things of that nature. In terms of looking at the educational grants aspect of it now, there has always been facilities out there. For instance, with Family Action, for instance, if you take a look at their website, family-action.org.uk / grant services. This entity, which has been around from 2004, has run an online educational grant search, and this unique facility enables students to identify educational grant giving trusts to which they're eligible to apply for funding. The educational grant search is sponsored by Barclaycard as a group, and which means that students can access it free of charge. It is able to match individuals to 1,000, basically 1,200 grant giving trusts listed within the database. What we found is in 2010, the educational grant search had more than 44,000 visitors, who between them were searching for 115.8 million pounds. When visitors complete the search function, what you find is they'll be supplied with a list of charities and trusts that they may be eligible to apply for, and it's up to the individual. Now, to break this thing down a little more, for those of you who still haven't gotten a clear idea of what a grant really is, a grant is how should I say it in its most simplest term? A grant is made as a gift of money, goods, or services. The majority of grants made by charities are one-off to pay for a specific item such as college fees, books, travel costs. Less commonly, charities make repeat grants to support individuals in the medium to longer term. For instance, annual grants to support a student through a course of education training. Some charities will supply goods or services rather than funds. For example, they might provide specialist equipment to help a disabled student. Um, just within the UK alone, there are over 1,400 charitable trusts for educational needs alone, and they distribute in excess of 60 million pounds each year. Um, so it's a thriving environment. Um, in terms of who can apply for grants and things of that nature, largely but not exclusively, grant-giving charities assist individuals or families in receipt of welfare benefits, those from a low-income housing, or those suffering financial hardship. These are the smaller grants. The definition of low income will vary and may be detailed in the charity's eligibility criteria. For example, household income of less than £20,000 per year is one of the requirements. Um, Now, the thing is, there are so many charities out there. It is up to you to structure how you're gonna, who you're gonna deal with, more so than how. Due to the large number of granting institutions, what you'll find is it is rather easy to get a grant, but the whole thing is you want to manage the grant properly. Um, in terms of the reasoning behind your grant work, I would suggest pursuing grants that are community building exercises and so on and so forth. In terms of the rules when applying for grant to grant giving charities, um, the first thing is you got to ensure that your application meets all of the eligibility criteria, and you must pay attention to the exclusions as well. Uh, what I would suggest you do is to basically print off the criteria and tick them off as you go through the application form to ensure you're meeting all of the charity's criteria. The second thing when applying for a grant is answer all the questions on the application form or provide comprehensive but concise details in a letter if no application form is required. The third thing that you want to be mindful of is supply all the required supporting documents. You see, even if it's for smaller grants of say $5,000 or $10,000, give the institutions what they require of you. The fourth thing is take your time to complete the application form properly. A lot of forms are being discredited for simple things. Basically, the state of affairs of the document once it has been handed back in has been an issue. Another issue has been improper filling out of the document. And another issue was basically not adhering specifically to the questions being asked. The fifth thing that you need to be mindful of when applying for the grants is every grant facilitator has a deadline. They either have their deadlines in the first quarters or whatever the case may be, depending on their individual, unique organization's standard operating procedure. And with that in mind, when you decide you're going to deal with a particular grant, you have to be mindful of the deadline. You cannot expect to get the grant if the grant's deadline is March the 15th and you're just showing up on May with your documents. It'll be difficult for you to get funded. The next thing is keep a copy of the application form and supporting documents so that you'll be able to keep up and make sure you're a little more organized in your pursuit and the follow-ups. The follow-ups that you'll have to do. If you're looking for some other information on grant funding when it comes to education, I gave you the Family Action .org link. For students, another one would be studentcashpoint.co.uk. For postgraduate students looking for funding, I would suggest postgraduate students studentships.co.uk. If you're looking for online directory for individuals in need dealing with welfare and educational grants, you would have to register and pay for this particular search. That would be found at grantsforindividuals.org.uk. Another good educational grant directory that I encountered is a publication by the Directory of Social Change, which they were selling for about $75. That can be found at dsc.org.uk. And yeah, again, I say we're not recommending any of these companies as from an advertisement standpoint or anything of that nature, because we just want to try and get as much information out to you as possible. We just want to try and keep you in the know. As it stands, there are secrets to basically getting grant funding. In terms of the secrets to finding grant money for your business or idea, the secret to finding tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars in free grant money for any business or idea is to just simply get out there and make your ideas known to the various funding entities. Every day we read about government spending, but many of us do not realize that we may be eligible to receive some of the billions of dollars the government gives away every year. There are thousands of grant programs for students, as I said earlier, researchers, established businesses, and newcomers. So here it is. Grant money can provide you with the independence you need to finance your education, to fund a research project, to start your own business, or to launch you on a new career path, or to do something that will change the outlook of your community. There are two major obstacles everyone needs to overcome to get grant money. What are they? One, finding the appropriate agency to apply to. And two, writing a surefire grant proposal that will be accepted quickly with no hassles. So what you should do is write to federal agencies and private foundations in order to find out if your business, idea, or opportunity qualifies for grant money. Or you can consult with a professional who is familiar with the grant landscape, such as the good folks at Wilson and Roberts, and they can basically help guide you and steer you down the line to grant funding. Excuse me. The thing is, don't waste your time applying for grants that don't pertain to your type of venture. Keep in mind that many foundations fund businesses according to geographical location, so investigate nonprofit and government sources that are in your state. You should apply for as many grants and awards as you qualify for. Once you've gathered the support material for your proposal, all it takes is writing a simple contact letter. So you want to make sure that that contact letter is really hard-hitting, gets straight to the point, clarifies what your mission and your method is. Your personal financial situation is not important in obtaining grants as it is for getting loans or equity financing. I must put that in there, because even if you have money in the bank and a substantial income, that won't stop government agencies or foundations from granting you a lucrative award. When I say that, you must realize that this grant funding is money that has already been allocated to deal with this particular type of situation and scenario. So in holding this money or keeping this money, these various institutions, they're not benefiting themselves as such because this is already being allocated. What I found is there are so many great foundations out there, ranging from the Templeton Foundation to the Kauffman Foundation. You just have to take the time to basically research the grant facilitators, an institution, and what you're going to find is that grants is actually a good means of moving your entity forward. Now, one thing that I've encountered is with in dealing with NGOs in particular, in terms of grants and things of that nature. The international grant facilitators, if they're dealing with organizations that are supposed to be NGOs, or if they're dealing with organizations that are supposed to be community-based and community stabilized, so to speak. Most grant providers, they like to know that the team that is responsible for the dispersing of the funds on the ground are competent individuals. One of the things that I found in dealing in particular with a global banking institution was right down to the procurement of the various products that needed to be gotten for the project, which was in dealing with a fishing cooperative. What I found was, in terms of procurement, there was a methodology to that. In terms of the organizational workshops and seminars that were paid for by the grant, there was a methodology to that. Everything can be priced, everything can be accounted for, and once you are working within the umbrella, within the parameters set by the grant giving agency, you should have a rather easy time in terms of manufacturing the results, and that is what it is really all about. Is about bringing positive results. In terms of your grant proposal, I would suggest that you keep your proposals short and straight to the point is the key word, because keep in mind, these individuals who have to read through these proposals are getting hundreds of proposals on a regular basis, and it is, the language should be clear and concise in terms of the outlay. It is better to give more information than not enough information, but in terms of the quality of the information, it should be of a substantive nature. In terms of what most organizations are looking for, they're looking for a organization that can run effectively and will use the funds in an effective manner. In terms of what has been the history, most organizations have had, I would say, a 20% success rate in terms of getting grants once they stay within the confines and the criteria of dealing specifically with organizations that are dealing specifically with their field or their sphere of operation. In terms of after you've submitted your grant proposal, most institutions would call you or email you and let you know if you're being successful in obtaining the grant. So the follow-up of calling the people every day and emailing them every day, that would only get on the person's nerves. So what I suggest is you establish a time frame that is fair and reasonable and won't create an annoyance as to when, and try and find out when the grant decisions would have been made to ensure that your timing would be somewhat impeccable in that regard. Grants today, when I say today, this is 2012 and beyond, grants is a very decisive and is a very clean way of getting funding. For young business persons who are looking for grants, it will ensure some degree of accountability, but not to the level of dealing with angel investors or venture capitalists, because it is a very, there tends to be a trust factor there in terms of disseminating the funding and things of that nature. But in order to be successful with grants, I would say that whatever grants you go behind, I would suggest that you're very upfront with the persons and in terms of detailing what it is you're looking to accomplish, and and don't give up. I would suggest dealing first and foremost with foundations and institutions that are scaled towards the size of the grant application that you're looking for. Um, if you're only looking for about $10,000 or $20,000, it doesn't make any sense going to a large entity like the Templeton Foundation or the Kaufman Foundation looking for money. Now, if you're going beyond that $10,000, and say, for instance, you're looking for a medical research grant, you're a young doctor who needs grant funding, and you need about $2 million or $3 million to accomplish what you need to accomplish, and you fit within the criteria as set out by the larger institutions that give grants, then by all means, go right ahead, go for the gusto, go for the whole hog, as the old folks used to say. Because what I've found is, especially in dealing with research, medical research, is a lot of the foundations, they're very open to giving grants to research and development in the medical field that is going to basically affect the larger human race. Um, the issue is always to stay aggressive in getting out there and researching the grant companies that are available to you. But if you know for a fact, just like in raising funding through dealing with venture capital firms or angel investors, it's going to take some time out of your day-to-day standard operating procedure, and what you're going to find is going to take some time. First and foremost, you're going to need the time to do the follow-ups with the many different organizations. What I would tell you is the more organizations that you approach that deal with your area of expertise in terms of what you need funded, the more of them that you approach, the greater your success will be. And unlike bank loans and things of that nature, where you get penalized for going and getting another loan with an opposing agency, there is no real penalty in terms of if you were to be the recipient of more than one grant. I've not encountered any scenarios of a penalty to be given out and deemed out to those recipients of the grants. In terms of what history of receiving grants does for you as a company or as an entity, it brings credibility to you on a different level. For instance, when the last grant that I worked with that cooperative, that particular grant was for $180,000, and after the period of that $180,000 grant, the granting institution actually offered $14 million to that cooperative to get its operations up and running. So here it is. See your grant as a door to larger blessings. See your grant as a doorway to doing bigger things within your business or within your education. What I suggest is, in terms of students especially, I mean, there are enough grants out there that if you wanted to do from your associate's degree all the way up to your PhD, there are enough grants out there that you can be facilitated. For businesses, if you want as little as 10,000 to as much as 10 million, there are grant facilities out there for that. So if this is the arena that you're looking to get into, and you need help and you need assistance in structuring your proposal, if you need help in getting your proposals out there, I would suggest using Wilson and Roberts Limited. They have good history, and their results have always been good in that regard. So in that regard, I want you to have a good day, and God bless, and be successful in your grant pursuit. And I wish you the best. Have a good one.